welcome back, everybody, to the JeffersonKRogers podcast, the all-in experience. Today, I got a really cool guest, one of the original 10 people that I put on my list of guests that I wanted to have when I started my podcast.
Nice.
Mr. Ron Dunford. And we're actually family members. We're getting ready this week to head to a family reunion. So this is kind of cool timing.
Yeah, it is.
That all this has come about. And thank you for getting me on your schedule. I know you're busy traveling all over the world, literally, for doing the CEO position of Schreiber Foods. And probably, like me, most of our listeners have maybe never heard of Schreiber Foods.
Sure.
Because you guys have a lot of name brands that operate and use your guys' products, but you guys don't really have to go out there and market your guys' name.
Don't have our own brand, yeah.
Right?
Have our own brand, yep.
So, but that wasn't always the case, was it?
So generally, I'm going to say yes. It started out as Cache Valley Cheese years and years ago, but we've always done customer brand stuff. And so first of all, before I even answer that question, so thank you for inviting me on. Great to be here with you and see you, and a pleasure to be able to do this with you. So Schreiber Foods, I mean, we're a customer brand company. What the hell does that mean, right? That means that 8 out of every 10 cheeseburgers in the U.S. has our cheese on it, but nobody knows, because when they go to McDonald's, they order a Big Mac, or when they go to Wendy's, they order whatever they order, or when they go to In-N-Out Burger, they order the burger, they don't order it for the cheese. Of course, I'm biased, and I think the thing that makes the burger is the cheese, right? But it's our product that's on the cheeseburgers that you're eating, or it's our product that's in the cream, or it's in the cream cheese for Cheesecake Factory, right? So if you get a cake there, then it's going to have our stuff in it. That's a lot of dang cream cheese. It's a lot of cream cheese. So it's we're the product behind many customer restaurants and even retail brands and
I'm curious too, if you were to go and ask a manager at the Cheesecake Factory, would they know who Schreiber Foods is?
They probably wouldn't. Their corporate obviously does, right? But all of the stuff on their menu, man, it's not just what's in the cheesecake itself. It's all of the cheese that's on their entire menu. But it comes in not under the Schreiber Foods brand. It comes in under their brand and different brands. So they probably wouldn't even know. So if I explained to them and I told them, then they'd go, okay, I got it.
Okay, yeah. Seems like I've heard that somewhere in some conversation.
Yeah.
I'll bet. Now, you guys have some big name brands too, like brand name store-bought cheeses, right? Because Cache Valley Cheese is even still a brand.
Yeah, so that one actually isn't part of our group anymore.
Oh, it's not?
No. So we really pretty much are, so think of CPGs, consumer packaged companies. So if you're in the yogurt world, and I won't necessarily mention their names because they all don't necessarily love the fact that people know that we're producing their product instead of them producing their product. But I'll just say some of the largest yogurt brands that are out there in the market today are actually produced by us for them.
Wow.
When you go into the local grocery store, right? So whether it's a Western Family brand or whether it's a Great Value brand, right? That's the customer brand, but we're the cheese behind the brand that's out there. When it comes to cream cheese, there's either Philly, which is Kraft, or there's everybody else, right? And we're 90% of everybody else.
Wow.
Right? So again, we're a large company that I got to tell just a real quick funny story about that. I was at Utah State a few years ago speaking to like 500 students. Then I said, has anybody heard of Schreiber Foods? And nobody had. And
like so the entire auditorium.
Like nobody
not one person.
Right? And we actually have a plant in Logan where Utah State is, right? So they still didn't even know who we were. And so I said, well, look, you just raise your hand if you've ever eaten any of these products, right? So I started ticking off, right? Have you ever had a Big Mac, or have you ever had a Subway sandwich from Subway, or have you ever had this brand, right? Pretty soon everybody's hands raising. And finally, this young co-ed, she was on about the third or fourth row, she spoke up and said, do you do Three Greek Gods, which is a yogurt brand that we do. It's mostly in the West Coast. And I said, yes, we do. And she hollered out, oh, I love you, man. And I thought, well, so I love you too, right? Keep eating our product. So at the end of the day, everybody eats our product. They just don't know they're eating the product.
That's amazing to be that big of a company, and it's a multi-billion-dollar company, isn't it?
Yeah. We're approaching about $6 billion. We've got 40 facilities around the world. Half of those are in the U.S. Half of them we got large presence in Europe, but India as well, Mexico, Brazil. So global company.
Yeah, and we were just talking before we jumped on, and you of those 40 plants in a non-COVID type of environment, you're typically traveling to those 40 at least one time a year.
Yeah, one time a year. I try to get to every facility once a year, so on the road a lot. Now, I can do multiple, like in one trip. So I'll go to Europe and see 4 or 5 at a time, or in the U.S., I'll take a trip and I'll see 3 or 4 facilities at a time. So it's not like I'm traveling 40 weeks in a row, but between customers and suppliers and our plants, I'm probably on the road close to 40 weeks a year. Yeah.
So now, as the CEO, I imagine you're going to these places and you're pretty intentional about what you're going there for.
Sure.
So just for an example, like the last trip you took, what was an example of like what you were going there for at that time?
Well, so for me, it's a couple things. One, I'm always out there to help build a relationship between me and our hourly. So we call our employees partners, right? Yeah. So you use that word partner. So I'm just trying to establish a relationship between me and our partners. I have a very open dialogue. I have town hall meetings where it's none of the leadership team local. I just want to meet with our partners and get a feel of what's going on. I'm always looking,
like the guys on the ground floor.
Like the guys on the ground floor. Yeah, absolutely.
What's the environment like when you're not around?
Yeah, well,
and they're not afraid to tell you the truth.
Exactly right, right? But I'm always looking for a few simple things when I go into a plant. In fact, there's 4 things, and I tell every leadership team around the world, they know when I come in, I'm going to be looking for 4 things, right? Number 1, crazy clean, right? I mean, we're a food manufacturer. We ought to be freakishly clean. Right? There's no reason why not. And for me, cleanliness represents everything good about a manufacturing environment. It represents quality, safety, partner safety, line efficiencies. It represents who we should be. So number 1, I'm going to be looking for cleanliness when I walk into a plant. Number 2, we have multiple lines going in the plant. I want to see our lines running, right? I mean, I want to see product just flying down our production lines. It drives me crazy to go to a plant and see lines broken down or, lines half empty. So I want to see our plants operating and running. The third thing that I'm always looking for is if we post it, you better practice it. And what do I mean by that is if you say something on the wall, if this is what you proclaim on the wall, then you better be practicing it on the floor. Right? Don't post something that you're not going to practice. So if you say quality is important, you better demonstrate that. If you say safety is important, you better demonstrate that. If you're measuring throughputs and how great we are from an efficiency standpoint, then don't just show me on the wall. You show me on the floor, right?
Yeah,
so that's the third thing. Show me the numbers. And then the fourth thing is just engagement, right? I want all of our partners around the world in the game, right? I don't want anybody on the sideline just cheering us on. I want people to show up every day in the game. And so I'm looking for engagement with just in their job, what they're doing, but also engagement with their leaders. And so it's the relationship that they have. So every plant, everywhere in the world, I'm looking those 4 things. Now there's other things, but very consistently those 4.
So how has that changed over the years since you first started taking these trips? Has your perspective changed and what you're going to look for?
So great question, and I'm going to say it probably has evolved a little bit, but I grew up in a plant, right? Yeah. I grew up in operations, and so I knew what to look for, and so I didn't have to make it up. I mean, I knew what a success looked like in a plant.
Wow.
And so when I became CEO, I just said, well, we ought to make sure that we're continuing that journey.
Now, along those lines, you have a pretty cool story as you came up and evolved within this company. So first question is, where was the company from like a revenue standpoint when you started all those years ago?
Well, so we've acquired a lot of different companies. In fact, I was part of an acquisition that went to Schreiber Foods.
Okay.
And so when I started, 39 years ago.
39 years.
So in 1982, when I started, I was an hourly partner, sanitation worker on the night shift. I was going to school at Utah State, needed a job to put myself through school. So I just started as a cleaning up after everybody. And so at that time, we were probably, a couple $100 million in revenue.
Okay. So it was still a great big company
it was
when you started.
In those days, yeah, that was still a decent sized company. We had 5 different facilities. We were selling product not outside the U.S., but in a lot of places in the U.S. So yeah, decent sized company.
So now, starting as a sanitation worker, I imagine just knowing where you maybe were at that age that you didn't have the foresight to see this was my plan, was to become the CEO of this company. But kind of walk us through what that looks like and what the progression was and what your mindset was as you started to see some of that opportunity to come.
Yeah, so another great question, and I would say it even probably starts a few years before then, right? So
before you even started with that company.
I get out of high school and I got out from underneath my parents, I'll just say their ways, right? Which were fine, by the way, great parents. But got out on my own, and I probably didn't make the best choices for a few years, and did a lot of things for the next 5 years before I went back to school. And so I was a 23-year-old freshman. I was a freshman, and most guys my age were graduating, going off and getting these jobs. Yeah. And so I needed to find a job, which is so I started in school and at Cache Valley Cheese at exactly the same time. Right. That's how I started. And 4 years later, because I knew I'm already behind, I can't be on a 6-year plan to graduate. It's got to be a 4-year plan. But I got to work full time too because I don't have any money. Right. So, which you would think I should have had some money because I'd been working for 5 years or for a number of years doing some things.
Like most of us, you just spend it all.
You'd spend it all. So anyway, I knew I needed to sort of double down, school and work at the same time. So when I started, no, the plan wasn't, I'm going to become the CEO of Schreiber Foods. Yeah. But the plan was I'm going to be a leader of something someday, right? My dad, he was a tough guy, right? Tough love. I knew my dad loved me, but it was tough love. And I don't think I appreciated all of the lessons that he taught me through life until a little bit later on in life. I didn't always appreciate the tough love, but it was that taught me a whole lot of lessons.
Absolutely.
And so one of the lessons he taught me is, Ron, it doesn't matter what you do, just be the leader. Right? You can be anything you want to be, but be the leader of whatever that happens to be. And so that was ingrained in my mind. And so I just knew I wanted to be the leader of something. My degree was in geology, so I was going to go find oil wells somewhere, someday, right? So I was going to be an oil guy. And so CEO of Schreiber Foods, no. I mean, that wasn't even in the mindset at all at that point in time. So how did then you get from an hourly sanitation guy to the CEO? Well, when I graduated, there weren't any jobs in geology or in the oil industry, which is what I had graduated in. I had worked my way into a leadership position within the plant because one of the other lessons my dad taught me is when you're in something, be all in. Right?
Absolutely.
So it wasn't just a job to get me through school. It was a job that I was going to give my all to. Even though I didn't think I was going to stay there, I was going to do my best every freaking day, right? So I did that and worked my way into a leadership position such that when I graduated and there weren't any jobs in the oil industry, I said, well, heck, I'll stick around in the food industry for a couple years until something changes. And so I looked around and I almost left the company at that point in time, but I had a mentor who said, hey, look, you're offered this big money to go to these other food companies. I can't offer you the same amount of money, but I can give you an experience, right? All you've been's an operations guy. But you ought to try sales, you ought to try marketing, and ought to try some other things. And so he says, I can't give you the money, but I'll give you an experience. And so I said, okay, I'll take the experiences. And so I took that experience for a couple of years, which is on the sales side. And a couple of years later, it's like, okay, it's probably time to go out and find my oil well, right? Whatever that happened to be. And then another experience came along, right? To go be, at the age of 29, a plant manager, managing and leading people that were, 40, 50, 60 years old, right? I didn't even tell them how old I was at the time. They just assumed I was older.
So at 29, you had now had some experience all the way at the bottom.
Yep.
And then doing some sales for how many years?
A couple years in sales.
Yep. Great life experience.
Yep.
And then it was kind of a coin toss between leaving to go do something else, and then I guess I'll try this project manager
So it was the
thing.
same. It was the same guy, right? It was the same guy who said, "Hey, Ron, I know you've been doing this really successful. We've got this plant up there that we need to get going again. Do you want to go manage the plant?"
Wow.
And it was an opportunity where the plant had been shut down just recently. And so I got to staff the entire plant, right? From the milk receiving guy all the way to the head cheese maker to the people in the office. And so they became, at a very young age, they became my family because I hired them all into the business, into the company. And it was my laboratory. I used to practice leadership stuff on them, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm still a pretty young leader at that point in time. So I'm thinking, well, I'm just going to try and see what works. And I would try some things and that didn't work so good. And I'd try something else and it worked really good. And so I practiced leadership stuff.
What a great opportunity.
Yeah.
So was it a success?
It was. Yeah, we had a great success. Yeah, I mean, 2.5 years later, same guy, one of my mentors, called me back and said, "Hey, our VP of Sales and Marketing is leaving. You had just a couple years of sales, but you did really good. You want to come back and be VP of Sales and Marketing?" And so I went from sales to operations and back to sales. And so my career has been sort of back and forth. And I'll just say there's just been a lot of opportunities that I've been able to take advantage of. Right? It's and I'm one of these ones who believes the old adage that luck is about when your preparation meets the opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. Then you find luck. So some people would say, "Gosh, Ron, you were lucky. All of these different parts of your career just happened to be right there at the right time." Well, yeah, but I was prepared, I think, right? So you prepare the best you can, and when opportunity presents itself, even if you're not 100% prepared for that opportunity, you sort of jump at it because luck presents itself, right?
Absolutely.
So preparation meets opportunity. Some people call that luck. Some people call it just career progression, right?
Yeah.
So I just kept progressing through my career.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So, and now the part of the progression is that you know every single in and out of this business.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do.
So now you've got just a ton of value. So now how did it go from the VP of Sales and Marketing to I think you stepped away for a while, and then they're like, "This guy has so much value. If you look at his track record with us, we can't let him go. Let's bring him back."
Yeah, so what happened is, at that point in time, I still wasn't at Schreiber yet, right? So I'm still relatively young. I won't get into all the history, but actually became the president and general manager of a smaller company that involved the Cache Valley Dairy and Dairy Gold out of the Pacific Northwest, so became the president and general manager of that. And that company ultimately was acquired, broke apart and was acquired by Schreiber Foods. And so this was an interesting sort of journey or point in my career. I was the president and general manager of a $300 million, 300-person company. I was probably 33, 34 years old, was feeling pretty good about things. And all of a sudden, that company went away, and I was going to either stay with one of these dairy cooperatives, or I could choose to go to Schreiber Foods. And I had the choice. And Schreiber said, "Well, Ron, we're a bigger fish, right? We're a bigger pond. You can come here. You've been the president of this company. You can come here and be a team leader, right? You can lead a sales team." And so
was that kind of a step back? They were
huge
trying
step
to
back.
test you a little bit?
Well, and for me, the decision was, do I want to bet on myself, right?
Yeah.
So here I'm going to go to a company. Schreiber Foods wasn't $1 billion yet at that point in time, but it certainly was bigger than what the company that I came from, like 3x bigger. So I thought, I'm going to bet on me, and I'm going to go work for these guys at a fairly low level, but I bet I can work my way up, right? And so within a couple years, I was promoted to a vice president and senior vice president and then president, and joined their board 20 years ago, and was the president of our U.S. business, which was the largest of our business, and then in 2017 I retired. Right, I decided it was time to go do a lot of other things. And one of the things I did is actually I went and worked for a nonprofit for 1.5 years as their president and CEO, and traveled a couple 100,000 miles around the globe to Ghana and Nepal and the Philippines and Honduras and all over the place, basically teaching financial literacy, business skills, providing microloans, providing hope to entrepreneurs who wanted a better life, right?
Wow.
And so did that for 18 months. And then Schreiber Foods, they were searching for a new CEO. The candidates that they had, they just didn't quite get comfortable with, and so they said, would you consider coming back, right? And so normally when you retire, you're off to do other things, and I never really retired because I just went and did nonprofit stuff, and it's not in me to retire anyway. And so when they said come back, it was an easy. I love the company, love the industry, know where we're at, know where we can be. I knew that there was a lot of possibility ahead for us, and figured out, if they want me to come back, and I've got the support of the board and the support of the employees and the support of the industry, gosh, why not? That's a pretty good place to launch.
Did they make you a pretty sweet offer too?
Not bad. Yeah, it was worth it. It was worth it to go back.
Didn't even have to negotiate?
No, it was easy.
That's pretty cool. So now you've been back there for 2 years.
2 years. Yeah, 2 years.
And how much longer do you plan on staying?
Probably 5.
5 more?
Yeah, I suspect. I mean, one of the big questions that everybody asked when I first went back is this just an interim, right? I mean, here's a guy who retired. We know him well, but...
And everybody's kind of watching, like, are they crafting any plans behind the scenes? Anybody else coming up?
And he just turned 60, so you don't bring a 60-year-old back to be the CEO, right? I mean, and so they were thinking this is an interim. And so one of the first things I did when I got back was I met with all of the partners and said, hey, I mean, just to set the record straight here, I'm coming back to be the CEO for whatever that period of time is. Is it 5 years? Is it 7 years? I mean, the average lifespan of a CEO is somewhere between 5 and 7 years. Mm-hmm. And so I said, I'm a competitive guy, so I'm going to be 7.1 years, right? I'm going to beat the average. I'm going to beat the lifespan. So
that's why the extra 5 years.
So that's extra. I got 5 more. I got to beat the. I'll be 67 at the time, and then it'll probably be time to retire. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think you probably have the buy-in from your people, from just what I know about you, because just like anything else in your life, you've gone all in. And you're completely bought in, sold, and convinced that this is the right thing, you're the right fit. And
well, every company, every CEO, I'm going to say every leader has a job to do, right? Mm-hmm. And it's different for the next CEO. You never want a CEO that does exactly the same thing that the last guy did.
They're all going to bring a different
Always
dynamic.
Going to bring, right? So I'm the 8th CEO in our 80-year history. And I'm not like any of the others that have been before me. I think I'm right for this time, mm-hmm. because I know where we need to get, and I know what we need to do to get there, right? So I'm doing things differently than my predecessors, not just predecessor, but predecessors did. But it's all with the intent to make a difference, and so wow. We've got a great team, and we got a good bunch of partners that are on board. They're in the game.
So I'm curious too, because there's one thing that has made a big difference in my business in the last 2 years, that even on a $6 billion level is super important from the sounds of it, and that's the culture and the environment for your people to show up to every day, to get that buy-in from your people, and to get them excited about showing up every day and giving their 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, culture even changes slightly with new CEOs, right? You'd think a culture would be consistent, and it generally is, but I mean, for me, there's just 3 simple things that are part of our culture, and they're slightly different than what it was in the past, but not so much so that people had to take this big leap, right? And those 3 things are, number 1, passionate partners, right? Mm-hmm. I just want partners who are fully engaged, all in, as I said earlier, in the game, on the field, playing. Right, not on the sidelines cheering everybody else on. I want partners who are there because they want to be there, not because they have to be. That they want to be there. So it's a culture of engagement and excitement and energy and competitive spirit. Right. Yeah. So I want that, number 1. I guess it's not necessarily in this order, but number 2, customer obsessed. Right? I mean, we have a culture of understanding that our customers matter and matter a lot. So we want to be easy to do business with. We want to be an essential ingredient in their success. When they think about what do I have to do to be successful, we want them thinking, well, I better have Schreiber Foods as a supplier. Right? Better be working with that company, right? So I want our customers to think of Schreiber Foods as essential to their success. How can we? So it's important for us to know every one of our customers' goals. What are your goals? Because if I can help you solve your goal, I become more valuable, right?
Absolutely.
So it's a culture of, I'll just say, customer obsession, and then the third piece is brilliant at the basics. Right? It's a culture of understanding the basics of the business. The best companies, the best athletes, the best teams, they understand the basics of whatever it is that they do, and they get those things done right, right? And so we got to understand the basic blocking and tackling of our business and be brilliant at that. So we have a culture of understanding that simplicity. It's a complex world out there. We don't need to add more complexity. How do we simplify the business and become really brilliant at that? Those things. So if we can have a group of passionate partners who are customer obsessed, focused on being brilliant at the basics, that's the culture that we want. Now there's values and there's strategic priorities and there's a whole bunch of things that sort of go around that, but that's the basic culture that I've believed in for a long time.
So is that a consistent message with the company for years and years and years, or is that something that you've brought and implemented when you came on as CEO?
So great question. It's consistent with the areas of the business who have always worked with me and for me, right? It's now more broad than that, when it's the entire company. But it's not a huge leap to go from where we were to that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I was going to say the previous CEO, how did that play out with the transition, and how many guys did they try out before they decided that these guys ain't working? Maybe Ron just moved way further up on the list.
Yeah, in terms of the replacement.
Yeah.
So what they say? How would it work out? I'm very good friends with the previous CEO. He's our chairman of the board today, and that's kind of the natural progression. You go.
So he's still around too.
So he's still around.
Wow.
But not in the day-to-day business. Right? He doesn't. He does anything with the day-to-day basis. He just becomes the chairman of the board, and when I'm done with this gig, then I'll become the chairman of the board.
Wow.
Right. And so that's.
So how many years was he CEO?
He was CEO for about 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah, he was CEO for about 10 years, and great friend, good guy. Did a lot of amazing things. And in fact, I would say, built the foundation and base for, I guess, from which we can launch out and do even bigger and better things. So I always said all the way along, whoever replaces him as the CEO is going to have it's not going to be an easy job, but there's going to be so many things that have been done that become this launch pad for growth, right? So we haven't grown much in 10 years. We've been a pretty flat company. It's because of all the other things that he was doing, right? So automation, sophistication, robotics, just
technology
systems,
is growing
processes
so fast.
are crazy. So he did all those things. And what that allows me to do is to come in and not have to worry about that stuff. That's taken care of, right? So now how do I take that and really launch and grow as the company? And so that's what we're trying to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now you guys he set the groundwork for a lot of that ability to grow. So what are some of the goals that you guys have? I mean, you guys are approaching $6 billion.
Sure.
What room do you guys still have to be able to grow?
Oh, ton of growth, ton of opportunity.
Crazy.
We have, our strategic priorities are just two things. It's growth and impact. It's just two words, right? So growth. We want to grow and can grow. We're one of the larger global dairy companies that there is, but we can double. We can be 2-3x what we are today, and I'm pretty confident that we will. Right? So we're growing a lot outside the U.S., but we're growing within the U.S. I mean, we just acquired UHT, which is a ultra high temperature protein drink facility. So premier protein or Orgain protein, some of the drinks that you buy at Costco and other places. Really? So we're doing protein drinks now that we've never done before. We're getting into plant-based products, and that's just exploding for us. We're just moving into Singapore, into Asia. We're building a place in South Africa. The board approved recently for us to go into the UK, so we're building a facility outside of London. And so there's a lot of growth for us. Yeah,
wow.
A lot of growth.
Does that mean taking market share from other companies?
Sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm a competitive guy. I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it does, right? So there's the core business, and I'll use the analogy of fortress and ships, right? So we have our fortress, right? Those things that have been core to us for many years, and so the idea is, how do you build moats and walls and defenses around your fortress such that nobody can get into you, so that no one can take your share. We want to absolutely protect everything that we've gained. I mean, for 80 years, we've been building this fortress. Let's protect it like crazy. Now let's send out some ships and let's go explore new lands, right? Let's figure out new products, new geographies. And so it's not just one or the other, it's and. Right? How do you protect and grow?
Absolutely.
And so we're sending out, ships all the time to say.
And that's how you end up with a protein drink company.
That's how you end up with.
I imagine there's a pretty extensive amount of work that goes into deciding whether or not this is a good fit.
Yeah. So acquisitions aren't easy. We've done a few over the years that haven't worked. But this is one that we're really bullish on. It's not the first in the category. We expect here over the next couple of years we'll make another acquisition or two in this category. So we're doing these types of drinks in India right now. We're doing them in Europe, and we just acquired a facility here in the U.S. to do them. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, good stuff.
That's awesome. So now, your journey from the sanitation guy to the CEO in 39 years. I mean, you never left during that time except for when you retired.
Yep.
39
sabbatical,
years.
Jeff, sabbatical.
So you took a sabbatical for 18 months.
Yep.
So maybe 36 and a half years,
Yeah.
37 years.
Yeah.
That's not all that common anymore, to be able to have an opportunity like that, to start at the bottom and continue to build yourself and bring value and work up to become a CEO. So we've had a lot of talks about leadership and other entrepreneurial things that, I'm involved in, a lot of my listeners are involved in. So I'm curious what your take is and what your advice is in, 2021 for people that are looking for opportunity. They're trying to decide, do I go to school? Do I start a business? How do I make the most out of what I've been given with my natural talents and abilities?
Yeah. So great question, and there's not a perfect answer, right?
Oh.
I mean, there really isn't. For me, and I shared with you my success principles, one time, and I can go through those because I think in some degree those help answer, that question, because it's very personal, right? I can't tell anybody this is what you should do. I can tell someone this is what worked for me and what I did, and I can provide all kinds of advice. But unless you buy into that and it's something that you want to do, it doesn't matter what Ron Dunford says, right? It's got to be right for you.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And I think maybe we have you share those principles, because if anything, you can take those principles and apply them to anything, along with wherever you're at, being completely bought in and sold and committed 100% and all in.
Yeah.
But would you share those principles with us?
Yeah. So there's 5 of them, and it's dream big, expect success, take action, do good, and have fun. And before I get into it, maybe let me just even explain why I came up with them.
Yeah.
Right. So this goes back years ago, and I started looking at, there's these universal truths in life, universal principles, right? The law of gravity, right? If you jump off a building, you're going to fall down, right? I mean, you're not going to float, you're going to fall. The sun comes up in the east and it sets in the west, and there's the seasons of the year. There's just certain things that no matter who you are, where you are in the world, these are just universal principles. Mm-hmm. And so I got thinking, okay, as it relates to success, are there some universal principles that if I do certain things will lead to success? So sort of this if-then filter. If X, then success, right? I was trying to figure out the if-what piece of that. And so that launched a journey for me of exploration of, so what are those success principles? And so I started looking at, okay, who are, individuals, sports teams, businesses, who are those people or teams or entities that I can look up to and say, okay, that is at least on the surface what I would define as success. So what are they doing, right? And I didn't, if you win the Super Bowl once, I didn't really care. I want you to win a couple of times, right? If you had a good year once, that's all right, but I want you to have a good year a bunch of times, right? I was looking for sustainable success, not a one and done sort of thing. And so I started really studying, right? I mean, what do the successful people do and what do the not so successful people do? Because it's just as important, right? You can study not successful teams and say, well, this is what they're doing, so I probably shouldn't do those things because it's not leading to where they ought to go. And so I started gathering these lists, right? And someone would have, here are these 5 things or these 6 things or these 8 things or 10 or 12, whatever. Everybody had their list of things that they should do. What I found, though, is that there wasn't any list that was identical to any other list. It wasn't. I don't know that it was necessarily confusing, but it also wasn't enlightening at the time either.
There's so much information.
Yeah, there's information overload, really. I mean, and so I eventually had this aha moment, which was that it's not that any of these lists are right or wrong. It's that they're all personal and they're all individual. And I sort of had this aha moment that said success is individual. You got to figure it out for yourself, right? So you can get all of the best information in the world, but it still has to make sense to you, and it has to be something that you can apply. And so then I changed my focus from this is what's working for everybody else to what should work for me. And so I came up with these 5 principles that I candidly think are universal. The application of them becomes a little bit personal, but those things that were so that's how I came up with them in the first place, was just this search, if you will, for success and the principles or the laws that if I do these things would equal success.
And I think because I've got these written down, and from my studies and what my principles are that I had written and put inside of my life plan, if you look at your 5 and you compare them to all those other people's lists, they pretty much fit in somewhere.
They do fit in somewhere.
In every single case.
Yeah, so there's the why, right? So everybody has their why, or a company has their why. Then there's the what. So I would say these 5 principles are the what for me, right? These are the things I need to do. Then underneath those, there's the how, right? So when I say dream big, I haven't found any team, any individual, any company who was hugely successful who didn't also have a big dream, right? How they executed that dream is different. So that becomes real personal. But at the high level, dream big becomes one of those universal sort of, I'll just say, principles that I would say if you don't have the dream, right, you're probably not going to get anywhere. And there's just hundreds of examples, right? There's the easy examples. You can talk about Sir Edmund Hillary, who was the first guy to climb Mount Everest, or you can talk about Alex Honnold, who a few years ago did a free solo of El Cap in Yosemite, which is, this crazy 3,000-foot sheer wall, and without ropes or anything else, he spidered up this thing, which is just phenomenal what he was able to do, right? Or Roger Bannister, who was the first person to ever break a 4-minute mile. Right? There's so many examples of people who did amazing things, and if you go back and look at it, it started with a dream for each one of them, and it didn't happen overnight. I mean, none of them made it in the very first attempt. Right? I mean, Hillary left a bunch of dead companions on the side of the mountain at one point in time. Alex Honnold, it took him 10 years of just maniacal focus to be able to say, okay, today's the day I'm going to climb El Cap, free solo, no ropes, not anything else, right? It was so you think about Roger Bannister, right? When he broke the 4-minute mile, there was a belief that it was absolutely impossible. In fact, there was some medical doctors who said, your heart will burst. If you run that fast, your heart will burst, right? So people would only run 4:06, 4:05, 4:10 because, gosh, it was impossible.
They didn't want to die.
Yeah, why would I do that? That's impossible, right? Until he did. And once he did, within the next 6 months, all world-class athletes were breaking the 4-minute mile because it wasn't impossible anymore, right? So the value of a dream is that it makes the impossible possible for everybody else, right? So there's the easy examples of those who have done big things. What I would say and what I always tell people, though, is you don't have to be the first to break the 4-minute mile. You don't have to be the first to climb Mount Everest. You don't have to be the strongest or the fastest. When you dream big, it doesn't have to be those things. It just has to be meaningful for you. It has to be big in the context of your world, right? It has to be big enough that it ought to both excite you and scare you at the same time, right? It ought to scare you because you've never done this before and you don't know if it's possible. And so there ought to be an element of nervousness and scare, but at the same time, it ought to excite you because you ought to think, gosh, how cool will it be when I do that, right?
Yeah.
So there's this nervousness and this excitement and this fear all wrapped into one. There's this element of craziness, right? I mean, gosh, when you first said a couple years ago you're going to read a book a day for 30 days or you're going to do some of the things that you've done, I guarantee you, Jeff, there were people who said, man, that guy's crazy. He can't do that. You know,
there's always the naysayers when you're making your big dreams too.
Yeah. And so if it's not big enough that you don't have someone saying you're crazy, that's probably not big enough, right? It needs to. I'll just say elicit those comments of craziness and of concern and of fear. And if you go out and accomplish it in your very first attempt, it probably wasn't big enough.
Wasn't near big enough.
No, right? If it doesn't radically change who you are as a person, it probably wasn't big enough, right? Because if you don't change, then ultimately you go right back to who you were and you don't accomplish anything. So your big dream needs to have all of those elements as part of it, right? Vision needs to be part of it. Goals need to be part of it. Action planning needs to be part of it. So it's the power of, so one of the things I talk about is when you create a dream, it can't be vague, right? It has to be clear. It has to be clear. So play along with me here for a second. I'm going to have you close your eyes.
Okay.
And I'm going to have you think about, imagine what I'm talking about. So you're in your favorite sports car. Imagine whatever that happens to be. You're driving along the coast in California, Highway 1. On one side of you is the ocean. There's a cliff. Beautiful, beautiful view. Mountain on the other side. Beautiful, clear day. You're driving along. Favorite music blaring away. One hand on the wheel. You got the other, hand sort of wrapped around behind you. Just cruising along. All of a sudden, you go around a corner, and there's this dense, thick fog, and you drive into it, and you can't see a thing. You got a cliff on one side and a mountain on the other side. What's the first thing you think of, and what's the first thing you do when you think of that?
Slow down.
Slow down. Yeah. You can open your eyes now. You slow down. You put both hands on the wheel. Sometimes the music's loud. I don't know why turning the music down even matters if it's foggy or not, but you turn the music down because you want to focus and you don't want to be distracted, right? And then you keep driving and you go around the next corner and all of a sudden it's beautiful and it's clear again. What do? Man, you turn the music back up, you speed up, you put one hand, back away from you, right? Vision is powerful when you can see clearly, right? And so that's just a simple little example of if you can have a dream that you can articulate to your team and say, this is what it means, this is what it's like, right? Then the team can go fast, they can be relaxed, they can have fun. But if there's fog at all in your mind, I guarantee you, your team is like crazy foggy, right? So you've got to be able to really clarify that. So part of dreaming big is to understand that vision, be as clear as you can, because when it gets foggy, you slow down and you don't progress, right? So it's the vision, it's the goals, and it's the plan. Those three things are extremely, extremely important, right? One of the things that, another thing that's crazy about dreaming big is, I'll ask some people sometimes, right? So do you think this is possible? You think you could do this? And generally the answer is, I don't think so. Well, why? The first thing they do is they think backwards in time. Well, I've never done it before, so therefore, why should I think I can do it in the future? We get sort of bogged down by our history and our past, and we think about probabilities, right, instead of possibilities. Probabilities is about the past. Well, I haven't done it in the past, so I probably can't do it again. Well, don't forget the probabilities. Start thinking about possibilities, right? So it's just a change of thinking.
Absolutely.
But dream big. Yeah, I mean, that's step number one. You got to get that one right.
I love that. And that's, I mean, I can attribute some of my success over the past couple of years to having goals, my own personal goals, and then just having ridiculous things that I want to accomplish within my business and being able to articulate that and share that vision and setting up basically my own economy that other people can see themselves fitting into.
Yeah.
So having a dream so big that other people's dreams can fit inside of it.
Well, and using words like that you just did, ridiculous. I want to do these ridiculous things. I want to do these crazy things. I want to do these fanatical things. I mean, those are words that create a passion. Those are words that you just think, yeah, I mean, I'm going to say, ridiculous, crazy. Well, guess what? Those are words that are synonymous with dreaming big, right? I mean, that's what that's about. Unreasonable, right? Having a playbook. I'm a believer in it. I've got a little playbook today. I mean, so I got up this morning thinking, okay, I'm going to go talk to JeffersonKRogers today, right? I'm going to write down some things that I might say today, right? So I do everything with the playbook. Now, just like a football game, you start off the game with a playbook. I guarantee you I won't say half of what's on here today.
Yeah.
You're going to ask me questions that have nothing to do with anything that's on here, and I'll scrap it all. But it doesn't mean you don't start off with a plan, right? So that's all part of dreaming big. It's the vision of the clear vision. It's those intermediate goals, and it's the plan to how to get there. So that's dream big. Right?
I love that.
And then that leads to number two, and number two is expect success. Right? You got to believe in the power of your dream. And I think it was Norman Vincent Peale who said, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Right? So conceive is the dream part, the believe is the expect success part, and then achieve is the get it done part, right?
Yep.
And so it's
take action.
Yeah, it's believing in that power. Right? So the power of positivity. Right, is an amazing thing. If people knew how powerful their thoughts were, they'd never have a negative thought. Seriously, if people knew how powerful their thoughts were, they'd never have a negative thought because they know they're just dragging them down. Right? I mean, there's in aeronautics, there's four forces, right? In an airplane, there's thrust that is taking you forward. There's drag that's trying to hold you back. And then there's a lift and there's weight, right? So the weight is just all the negative thoughts that we have, right? And so what you're trying to do is create as much lift as you can to overcome the negative so that you don't go backwards. And so negativity is just a weight. It's a load that you don't need.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that in the sales world and bringing in people from all different walks of life that have never been exposed to this. I mean, realistically, most people are not aware, even remotely,
of power of
their thoughts affect their day-to-day and how they are able to progress and their opportunity. And even after they have been exposed to it, then you're just beginning the process of developing the skill to first recognize it and then be able to start developing the muscle of overcoming it with positivity, because it never goes away.
No.
Doesn't matter how many years you've been practicing it, it will never go away. You just develop that muscle to be able to overcome it quicker.
Well, and your thoughts lead to words, and your words lead to action, right? I mean, the two most powerful words in the English language, I'm convinced of this, most powerful words in the English language are I am. I am. Because whatever you say after that sets the direction for your life. I mean, think about it. I am stupid, or I am pretty smart, right? I'm weak, or I'm strong, right? I mean, whatever it is, you put any words behind that, and it almost changes your physiology when you think about that. I am something versus, no, man, this is what so the two most powerful words in the English language, I am, because what follows next is your blueprint for life, right?
Yep, and you can have a lot of effect on the way things go for you by writing your goals down.
Yeah, absolutely.
In that exact phraseology.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that becomes part of your a morning ritual, right? I mean, your affirmations. I am this. I can be doing this. It's that power of positivity. It's the power of self, right? Taking action, expecting success is also about the power of self. So self-belief, right? Self-trust, self-confidence. I mean, those are all, they fit into that as well. I tell the story, I sometimes or an analogy. If I have a 12-inch plank, and I maybe even shared this with you at one time, but if I had a 12-inch wide plank, that's 30 feet long, and I laid it out on the floor, and I pulled a $100 bill out of my pocket and said, hey, I'll give this $100 bill to anybody who will walk across this plank, when I do it in front of an audience, everybody will want to come up and do it because, it's easy. It's
on the floor.
It's on the floor, right? If I raise it to the level of what this table is right now, which is, maybe 4 feet off the ground, and say, hey, now this plank's stretched 40 feet, between these two tables, who would do it? Everybody's going to come and do it because the risk isn't that great, right? But if I say, look, I'm gonna stretch it between, 20-story buildings. It's now 20 stories in the air. It's the same plank. Who will take the $100 bill? There's nobody that will raise it. Every once in a while, there's some crazy guy that'll say, I still do it, right?
I've got like a spike of adrenaline just thinking about that.
Right? So no one will do it. And so I'll ask the question, well, why not? Why not? And the answer is because of the risk. The answer is because they see themselves falling, right? When it's on the floor, what you see is you see yourself walking across. You don't even think about it. You just see yourself walking across. When it's 20 feet in the air or 20 stories in the air, what you see is you see yourself following, right?
Yeah.
And so we become we're great at I'll just say determining our life by what we see, right? We predicted by I'm either going to walk across or I'm going to fall, and so
that keeps people from doing a lot of things with their lives too.
Yeah. It absolutely does. Yeah, it absolutely does.
So I think I'm going to shift gears here a little bit because I wanted to. You lost your dad here pretty recently.
Yeah.
And kind of similar to my relationship with my dad, it wasn't always like where it was maybe at the end with you guys and where I'm at with my dad. So we have a great relationship now. We talk pretty regularly. But it wasn't always like that with you guys. And just from the little that we've talked about it. And I'm curious how you feel like that relationship with your dad set you up for your success.
Yeah, so great question. And what I would say is, I've talked about dreaming big. I've talked about expecting success. Taking action is the third principle. Those are all principles that were taught to me by my dad. I said, that I went on the search of success. When it comes back down to it, when I ultimately found mine, I didn't have to look any farther than my dad. Mm-hmm. So our relationship was one I said earlier of tough love, right? If the stack of hay wasn't done right, you pull the whole haystack down and you start over again, right? If you're digging fence posts and there's one out of alignment, right? It doesn't matter if you've got it down into the dirt and it's stamped down, you redig the fence post and you get it right? So he was one who, his attitude was, and he told me this all the time, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Right? It's life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster person. Sooner or later, what they'll always go to is the one who thinks they can. Right? So he was one who said, "Man, you got to have more fight than anybody else. It doesn't matter your skill, it doesn't matter your size, it doesn't matter anything else. You got to have more fight than anybody else. You got to believe. You got to expect success. No one should be able to outwork you, right? So when I was redigging post holes and redoing work that I thought was done okay, I was cussing him the whole time. Mm-hmm. Like, what are you making me do, right? There's three of us that did it. It's okay for these other guys to walk off and leave now, but no, I have to stick behind and do this. This doesn't make sense to me. So our relationship was one where we had some amazing moments. I mean, we went on trips, we'd go hunting, we'd do some just amazing things. And so the moments were magical, but the moments were pretty far apart. And it was all the in-between time when I was having to redo work, or his expectations of me were extremely high, right? And I mentioned earlier, I didn't appreciate that at that period of time. It was later in my life where I understood that I wouldn't be where I am today had he not taught me those early lessons, right? When I looked for those principles of success, I didn't, again, have to look very far. They were there the whole time. I just had to implement them. So, I mean, we had a great relationship at the end. I mean, there were a few. Gosh, there was a number of years. There was probably 4 or 5 years at a period of time in our lives where we probably talked to each other 3 times during a 5-year period. And so we sort of, and not that I ever doubted, even during that period of time, that he loved me. But, he just kind of went his separate way, and I went my separate way, and we didn't have much to do with each other. And so in the last, the latter part of life, I mean, it was all right. It was good.
You start to see it coming to an end almost.
Yeah.
And it's like, how much more time am I going to have to be able to spend with my dad?
Sure.
And my dad's still got a lot of years, and I get those feelings sometimes because I'm so busy with life, and he lives like 8 minutes from my house, but we don't get to see each other that often.
Well, so, and I mentioned some of the moments I had with my dad were amazing, right? My 5th principle, which is have fun, the power of moments is embedded within that one, right? Mm-hmm. You have to create them. I mean, life is mostly a series of forgettable, not unforgettable, but forgettable events. I mean, you go back and think of your life. I mean, there's just many days that are just a blur. You can't remember much. But what you remember those moments, the highs and the lows, right? The lows are going to come at you whether you want them or not. You're not trying to create low points in your life. They're just going to happen naturally. But you have to intentionally create high points.
Yes.
Right? And so what you don't want to do is you don't want to wait for a once-a-year event to have that high point happen. Create as many moments as you can through life, and I think, again, that's part of having fun is what are those moments that are memorable that I don't have to see. I didn't have to see in the latter years. I didn't have to see my dad every day. I didn't have to see him every week or every month, right? You don't have to. It doesn't have to be with that frequency, but you have to be intentional about creating time to have fun and to celebrate and create memories that will last forever. I mean, so Dad's gone, but you know what? It's not the 5 years that I didn't talk to him that I remember, right? Until we talk like this. Yeah. It's those magical memories, those moments that we had that you cherish, right? So how do you create moments that are memorable, well beyond anything else?
And not just with your dad that's maybe coming to the end of his life, but being intentional. Like I've been trying to do this with my family, because business, if you let it, can take your focus off of a lot of important things.
Yeah.
And I've spent periods of time where it was kind of that season where I was lacking some awareness, and I went hard, and I was watching some of those things deteriorate. So, with new perspective, if you're intentional about it, you can make changes and you can turn things around pretty quickly, but not without like really seriously being intentional about what you're doing with your time and those important relationships in your life.
Yeah, think about it, Jefferson, in terms of harmony, right? So often you hear the word, work-life balance or family balance. And so what's this whole thing about balance? Well, it's not about balance, it's about harmony, right? I mean, in an orchestra, in a symphony, every instrument doesn't play the exact amount of time, right? But they play such that there's perfect harmony, throughout those, right? You're never going to have exactly this many hours with my family, this many hours at work, this many hours here, this many. It's never equal, right? Some people think balance means equality. It's not equal in terms of time. It's harmony. Are all of the activities that you're doing such that you get to be the conductor of the orchestra. You get to, and you need to decide, okay, I'm going to spend this much time here and this much time here and this much time there, and together in harmony, that's going to work well, and it's going to create the great kind of music that I'm looking for. So absolutely. I'm not looking for balance in my life. I'm looking for harmony in my life. And to the extent that you can get that, then everything else feels about right.
Yeah, and I've come to learn that too, because my mom has told me my whole life that I need to have balance. And then the more and more that I study successful people, the more that I start hearing these other alternative points of view, like harmony instead of balance, and that balance is, it's worth going after, but it's impossible to achieve.
Balance means mediocrity.
Yeah.
For me, right? If you're perfectly balanced, there isn't a perfectly balanced CEO. There isn't a perfectly balanced NBA player. There isn't a perfectly balanced, right? For success, there is no such thing as perfect balance. So if you're trying to be hugely successful and perfectly balanced, then you'll be frustrated.
Yeah.
If you're trying to be hugely successful and live in harmony with all of the different things and understand how things fit together in your life, and play that instrument at the right point in time, right? And be fully present there. I mean, if you're with your family, forget about work, be with the family, right? Then it will work out.
So how important has it been to communicate that with the people that you love? Because I know that you have a similar personality to me, where when you're in something, you're all in and you're focused, and it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So is this a conversation that you've had with your wife?
Yeah, so it's a challenging one for me a little bit, because it's hard to it's not easy. I'm not perfect at all in many areas, but certainly not this one where I can completely set something aside.
Yeah.
Right? If my mind is somewhere, sometimes it's really hard for me. But yeah, I mean, she understands, and she knows when I'm focused on work and I got a big project going on, and she comes to sit down with me, that she's just better off to stay away. Right, because that's, I'm not going to give her the attention that she wants or deserves, candidly, at that point in time. Right, so it's the time and the place for everything, and just make sure that everybody knows that. But I have to work on that all the time. Right, if I go out and I'm with the family, I have to consciously say, okay, right, sort of close the book on everything else that I was doing, leave it aside, and
as difficult as that is,
as difficult it is, because you can't be in two places. You can't have your physical body someplace and your mind 300 miles away, right? Your mind and your body have to be in the same spot if you're going to be successful, or if you're going to be fair to the person that you're with, right? So I've always said, whoever you're with at the time, that's where your mind needs to be. And if I have anybody at work that's just not there, if their mind isn't in it that day, then I say, go home, get out of here. Yeah. Go wherever your mind is, pick up your physical body and take it there, right? Because you're not doing us any good, and you're not doing yourself any good. So just get your mind and your body in the same space.
Yeah, I think this is, for me, it's been important because of the dynamic with my wife and having her as stay-at-home mom, that communication, because of my extreme nature. Yeah. I've had to get really good at communicating why I'm doing this and what this is for and what to expect. So it's not, having her she's supposed to understand what I'm going through right now and where my mind's at. Because it's hard for people to relate with different types of personalities to where my focus is at and why I do this and how I can be so intensely focused in this one thing right now, where I can't even hear you walking in the room. I can't hear anything you're saying right now. And it's super frustrating for her.
Yeah. But you just said two really key things, really important things. You talked about, I'm going to use the word ownership and focus, right? Successful people understand the concept of ownership. I got this. I own this. It's on me. Right? There's no excuses, no victim, no anything else. I am responsible for my life. And when you have that extreme ownership mentality, sometimes you get a little bit over the top, right? Yeah. Because you just go somewhere. But so extreme ownership, though, is a really important principle for success. The other one you mentioned, though, was focus, extreme focus, right? You can't do two things at once. Right, and there's been study after study after study. Yeah. There's 2% of the population can multitask successfully. 98% can't. Right, I'm in the 98%.
There's a lot of misconception about multitasking.
Hell yeah! You ask people, are you in the 2%? Or are you in the 98%? almost everybody will say, no, I'm in the 2%. I can multitask.
Yeah.
BS. You can't be effective if you are, right? So the power of focus and what that does and what that means is invaluable. I mean, the power of focusing on the thing that matters most, and that's the challenge with a lot of people as well, right? I mean, they'll get extremely focused on, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to go knock over this 2-inch domino. Right, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to go knock over a 2-inch domino. The next day I'm going to knock over a 2-inch domino without realizing that if you don't increase the size of the domino every day, you're not getting anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. So people get focused on the wrong thing. They get intense on the wrong thing, right? So just continue to go for bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing where not everybody has a personality like mine and maybe like yours, where when they're involved in something, that's where their focus is. They're all in. Yep. They're fully committed. And, I haven't always been like that either. When I first got involved with sales, because I wasn't very good at it, I wasn't taking responsibility. I was blaming outside things for my lack of success. But as I've started doing training and it started getting better and becoming more aware of the work that it took to be able to be at a professional level, I was focused on getting better.
Yeah.
And it's helped me develop as a leader too, because now I can articulate some of those things that I've gone through to accelerate the process for people so they don't have to learn the hard way.
Sure.
And I kind of did, but I got coaches and mentors throughout the process. But one of the important themes, I think, is the name of the show and the name of my book is All In. And as, like when you buy a new car, all of a sudden you see your stinking car everywhere. Mm-hmm. So now when I'm having conversations with successful people or just, listening to podcasts and reading other books, this message of All In has came up consistently now everywhere I look.
Sure.
So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we use that a lot at Schreiber Foods. I mean, we'll sign off with things, all in, hashtag all in. I mean, it comes back to what I was saying earlier. You want to be in the game, right? I want someone who's all in. I don't want half of you. I want all of you.
Yeah.
Right? When you're here, I want all of you. When you're home, I want all of you to be with your family or all of you somewhere else. I don't care. Yeah. But when you're here, I want you all in, right? I mean, life is 3 initials, B, C, D, right? Everybody, right? Everybody is born, everybody dies. In between B and D, there's a C, and C is choices, right? I mean, you talked about early on in your sales career different things. We're not who we are as our circumstances. We're not who we are for any. We are who we are because of the choices we make. I mean, we're all born, we'll all die. And life is just a series of choices, right? So you can choose to be mediocre, you can choose to not improve, there's so many, or you can choose to go down a different path. And you've chosen, you think about anybody's career, right? So the choices I made early on in my career, I thought were best at the time. You look back and you kind of laugh at the choices that you made, but it was step upon step. I couldn't have made a higher level choice at that time because I didn't know what higher level looked like.
Yep.
I had a big dream, but I couldn't make that step. I had to step through all of these other things first. And I mean, it's climbing the mountain, right? I've climbed a lot of mountains, and you first look at the mountain, you think, holy crap. I mean, that is just crazy, right? 4 or 5 hours in, you look up and go, it's not that far away. Another couple hours in, and the peak's really close. You think, wow, that's really close. Right? So the closer you get to whatever it is that happens to be, it's easier and easier. It doesn't look as impossible as it used to, right?
Yep.
It's not saying it's easy when you get near the top. You still got to get that last scramble. You still got to get the peak. But it's more doable. It's because of the choices that you make along the way. So every step you see a little bit clearer, a little bit more, and yeah.
And it comes with all those choices throughout your life. The more difficult ones you make, the bigger lessons you learn.
Sure.
And the more confidence you have in yourself to make those decisions and make them faster and make better decisions.
Yeah.
And then you get some clarity looking back about when you're coming into a difficult situation, growing a business it's scary sometimes, and there's unknowns, and there's an opportunity to learn from other people that have done it before, but it comes down to you having to make the decision and doing something that you've never done before that could go one way and cause all kinds of problems, or your hope is that this is the right decision, and we're going to make some big leaps and bounds because of this.
Well, strategy is about creating hindsight in advance, right? I mean, you just talked about it. You get to a point in time, and there's scary decisions, and 2020. It's great to look backwards and say, all of these things happen, right? So again, this is another thing that successful people do. They'll try to project out into the future, right? I mean, you did that. You said we want to be a $10 million, and I don't know what the next goal is, but I guarantee it's a heck of a lot more than 10 million, right? Yep. So all you're doing is you're projecting yourself out there, and then you literally have to project your mind 2 years or 3 years or 5 years out in the future and say, okay, here I am. Now I'm $100 million. I'm $500 million. What did I have to do to get here? And you work your way backwards, right? Some of the challenges, we work our way forward, and when we work our way forward, we don't have the capacity to do that because we're limited by today's thinking. So if you can, and a lot of people have a hard time doing this, but if you can actually project yourself out into the future and say, wow, look at what I'm doing. Well, I'm a $100 million company now. Let's look at how cool this is what I had to do to get here, and now work your way backwards. Well, then by year 4, I would have had to do this, and by year 3, I would have had to do this, and you work your way backwards. Then you're so success is creating hindsight in advance. Create that vision in advance.
Hindsight in advance. That's one of the new perspectives that I have, and the things that get me excited, just looking back like even 5 years ago at how far I've come. Yeah. It's exciting with these big goals that I have, the version of myself 5 years from now and who I'm going to have to become to be able to accomplish these things.
So let me ask you a question. How important on this journey that you've been on has personal development been?
It's been one of the most important keys to my success is daily self-improvement, and continue to raise my awareness and surround myself with higher level people to help me gain new perspective too, and being open to criticism. One of the things I struggled with in the beginning was being open to criticism, because as a young kid, you want to think that you have all the answers, that you're right where you're supposed to be, and you can be a little resistant to it. But as I started to reap the rewards of taking criticism and using it as a tool, and then doing something about it, sometimes it's still a little difficult to hear it, especially when it's coming from somebody like your wife.
Sure.
But I've become a lot better at taking the criticism and using it as a tool to gauge what's my next step, what's the next thing I need to work on.
Yeah. I would have been shocked if you would have said anything besides what you just said. If you would have even hesitated or paused and said, well, that wasn't that important. Personal development, never underestimate the value of that. And I'll tell people all the time, if you only have time for one thing today, if you only have time for one thing, work on you, right? Do something to improve an area of your life every single day, because you can't, no matter how big your dream, no matter how great you want to be in anything, if it's got to start with you, and if you're not working on you, then it won't matter.
It is, and that comes with experience, and it comes with perspective also.
Sure.
Because when I was first starting, I'd had people tell me that it was important to read books and the personal development, but a lot of that was just going right over my head. I'm like right here focused on the present, and you don't really grasp the significance of some things. Yeah. And so when I've talked to the guys, even in my sales organization or other people that are in the growth phase of their business, and they're asking these questions, like, I'm picturing myself. This is a similar question to what I would have asked in my first couple of years, when they're trying to look for some direction on maybe an investment. Yeah. Like, I've got all this money now, and I don't know what to do with it. And I ask them what book they're reading. Yeah. And they're like, I'm not really a reader. And they say the same exact things that I used to say. Yeah. Like, I'm not a very good reader, and and my attention span is short, and I always have to reread everything. And my advice, and that some of the advice that I got early on, was you should be investing in yourself. All of that money that you're thinking about going and spending on something that you know nothing about, the first investments you should be making are in yourself.
Oh, Warren Buffett, right? I mean, Warren Buffett, when asked what's the most important investment you can make, I mean, arguably the most successful investor of all time, right? Berkshire Hathaway. His easy answer is invest in yourself. And it's billions of dollars that he has. He'll say, well, invest in yourself first. That's his answer, right? What I always tell people, if they don't want to do something, right, I'll just say, okay, just imagine it's you, Inc. You are your own business, right? And you are a publicly traded company. You, Inc., you're publicly traded, right? You better be improving your value week after week, or people are going to be selling you. You're a stock. Or do you want people buying into you, or do you want people selling you off, right? So if you don't want to read, then tell me what else you're going to do that's going to increase your value between this week and next week. Because every week people are watching, right? So if someone is just like, look, I'm not going to read, I don't want to read, okay, fine. How else can you improve your value? Is it listening to podcasts? Is it whatever it happens to be? I'm a believer in reading. Love to read. Yeah. But figure out how your value can increase week to week to week. And reading is one of the easy ways to do that.
What book are you reading right now?
Actually, I'm reading a book called Limitless. Limitless by Jim Quick.
Yeah, Great book. One of my friends, Dave Allred, posted Limitless on his Instagram story just like 3 weeks ago.
Oh, is that right?
And so I'm always, as soon as I get a recommendation, I get on, before I forget, I use thriftbooks.com because I can get a hardback for like $4.59.
Nice.
Now, Limitless isn't a book old enough that it has any used copies out there, so I had to pay like $17 for that one. But yeah, I just got.
So Relentless was the one that I read right before Limitless. So Relentless is an older one. It's probably 6, 7, 8 years old now. So
coach?
Yeah, he was Michael Jordan's trainer.
I've read that one too.
And so that was actually a pretty good one. Someone had given me that here.
Tim Grover.
Yeah. He was pretty good. In fact, he just came out with a new book, Winning.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's been out on the podcast tours here recently promoting a new book.
All right. I'm going to pick that one up today. All right, Ron. So I cut you off because before I lose my train of thought on things, I had to ask you about your dad.
Sure.
But we got through dream big, expect success, and you were about to tell us about take action.
Yeah. So take action, and I'll go through these relatively quickly. Because we've already touched on a couple of them. Take action is about the power of personal development. Right. I mean, that's, if you're going to act on anything, act on yourself first. Right. So it's the power of personal development, and again, I think we've touched on that one pretty good. It's the power of habits. Right.
Yes.
It's not what you do every once in a while. It's what you do every day that matters. Right. And so it's, lifting weights. Right? You lift weights. Right. It's not, you don't go to the gym once every 6 months. Right? It's the consistency of going to the gym that makes it. In fact, you can go one time, and this is where most people fell. They'll try something once, and they'll go home, look in the mirror, and go, "Well, that didn't make any difference.
This isn't even working."
It doesn't work. Why should I keep doing this? Well, it's not that you did it once. It's that you did it once and then repeated it, and you became consistent. Right? So the power of habits and consistency is just extremely important in taking action from my perspective. And I think, and I'll say, it's, and you've heard this a lot, I'm sure, but habits aren't just about what you do, it's what you don't do. Right? Uh-huh. You have to decide the things that you aren't going to do. Right? That's extremely important in a business. Right?
Almost just as important as the things you do.
Right? Schreiber Foods, here are the things that we're going to do, but guess what, team? Let's be clear on what we're not going to do. Because I don't want you working on this stuff. We're not going to do that. So strategy is what you're going to do, but just as important is what you're not going to do, right? Mm-hmm. And that's all. I mean, that's all the power of habits. And then the other thing we talked about was focus, right? And one thing, and the importance of really getting in on the one thing and narrowing in on that, and so that you're not multitasking and doing a bunch of other things. So action is getting up.
Have you read that book?
Oh yeah, love that book.
Yeah,
love that book. I mean, it's
Such
for
a
sure
great
a
book.
top 10 for me all time. Yeah, so I do this thing where and I think I shared the story with you once before, but I'll if I'm in front of an audience, I'll pull out $100 bill from my wallet and I'll hold it in the air and I'll say, who in the audience here wants this $100 bill? And literally everybody will raise their hand. Right? Start, hey, I want it. And I'll stand there. When I'm on a stage, I'll generally walk around. I drive the camera guy crazy because I'm moving all the time, right? But for this particular thing, I'll stand perfectly still and I'll say, no, I'm serious. Who wants this $100 bill? And everybody's raising their hand and it gets more and more vocal. And I'll just stand there and I'll hold it. And I'll say, how bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? Finally, someone in the audience will stand up. They'll walk up on stage.
They finally get what's going on.
They'll take the $100 bill. And I'll say, okay, it's yours. And everybody else in the audience goes, oh, no. It was that easy. That's all I had to do, right? The lesson is success doesn't come to you. You have to go to it. Everybody raises their hands and says, I want to be successful. I want this. I want that. Ooh, I don't want to have to work for it. Ooh, I don't want to have to get up. Gosh, what if it's the wrong move? What if I get up to walk up there and take the $100 bill and you look at me and say, get the heck out of here. What are you doing? Right? What if I get made fun of because I stand up to go get the $100 bill? So everybody starts thinking of these what if sort of things until, again, it gets done. And I say, all you had to do is get off your butt and come up and get it. That's all you had to do. Success can be just like that. Get up and do something with it, right? So the $100 bill challenge is one that gets people every time. And candidly, I've done that around the world in the profit world and the nonprofit world. I remember this 70-year-old lady in northern Ghana, right? And so I teach these principles, right, to people who have nothing, who live on less than $2 a day. But I can say, you know what? There's a power of dreaming big. And for you, that just might mean getting water to your family, right? There's power in that, right? There's power in expecting success, believing that you can, right? If you can't believe in yourself, don't expect anybody else is going to believe in you, right? So you can talk to anybody about this, and then you can talk about having to take action, which is don't wait for some rescue mission to come over and save you. Don't wait for some nonprofit. You have to take action. And so I did this challenge. I've done it in different, monetary denominations around the world. It's not a $100 bill. It's like a $5, which is in some cases a week's worth of wages, money, right? And I remember in Ghana, right, everybody was just like, yeah, I want it, right? And some guy walked up and he wanted to grab it and he just couldn't. He'd put his hand there and then he'd pull his hand back and I didn't want to give it forward. I just held it still, right? And then finally some 70-year-old lady walked up and she just grabbed it. And I said, yes, it's yours, right? And the whole was in this little grass hut. They all erupted and they freaked out and they were cheering. They were so excited for her. And then they sat back and they realized, oh my gosh, we can do this. We have to dream. But we have to actually do something as well, right? And so there's power in taking action, and most people miss that part. I can dream big. Yeah. I can expect success. And I just hope it comes my way, without doing anything.
Absolutely.
It just
Did you ever
work.
see the little short film that they did about The Secret, the law of attraction? So there's guys like Jack Canfield and Bob Proctor and Sharon Lecter that are in this. And when I first watched it, it was before any personal development. Somebody had turned me on to it, and it was kind of hokey to me, some of the stuff that they were talking about. And they're talking about the law of attraction and the power of positive thinking and manifesting things into your life. And I haven't ever gone back to watch it, but one of the things that I missed was the action part. So it was years and years until I realized how important the action was, that it's not all just going to be positive thinking and writing your goals down and putting a vision board together. The action part is as important or more important than any of those principles.
It's the launch pad, right? It's I want to go to the moon, so that's my dream. I need to get the rocket on the launch pad, right? So I kind of expect I'm going to get there by putting the rocket on the launch pad. But if I don't flip the switch, if I don't take an action of just that one last thing that launches you off, then it doesn't matter.
Yep.
I mean, the launch pad's nothing. You got to actually ignition, and so, yeah, I mean, it's.
Yep, that's one piece that a lot of people miss.
They do.
Because it's intimidating.
Or they take the wrong action. That's what I find over and over. It's generally that it's because people are active. They're just active on the wrong stuff, right? So take action in the direction of your dream. Take action in the direction of where it is that you want to go.
Not just to stay busy.
Yeah. So everybody wants to. So in fact, when I very first did these principles, it was the third principle was work hard. Right? So it was work hard, then it was work smart, and then it's take action for me.
Okay,
so it's evolved over the course of time because it's not just about, work hard, work smart, but it's, you gotta, so to me, take action was a little bit more meaningful because it's taking action in the direction that you're wanting to go, right? It's not just how hard you work, because you can do the same thing over and over. You can be working your butt off and not making any progress.
We both know some people that are probably the hardest workers, but they never get around to accomplishing anything with their lives.
No, they do. They have 1 year's experience repeated 20 years, right? They're 20-year veterans. Well, but they've done the same thing 20 years in a row, right? So action is focused action, and that's what that one is all about, right? And for me, when I look at those first three principles, you could actually stop there. You could say, okay, gosh, dream big, expect success, take action, repeat. Right? That's all you got to do. And if you do those three things,
simple as that.
That's just crazy simple. But there's two that for me were missing from that. And that was the do good piece, right? Which originally actually for me started out to be play fair. It's evolved into do good, but it's the power of service, right? It's the power of values. It's the power of gratitude, right? Those are all part for me of doing good, right? It's how do you want your life to be remembered, right? It's what do you want your legacy to be, right? It's one of the things, I think this is a universal truth, right? The more you serve others, the more you comes back to you in your life.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, there's, people who have spent their lives in prison who didn't understand that concept of all and get out of prison and do something good for someone. Just some one little thing, it can be life-changing for them because they realize, oh my gosh, how good do I feel about just doing one little simple act of kindness, right? So simple little acts of kindness, simple little times where we can do good and make a difference in someone's life. I tell people, gosh, even if it's selfish on your part, you're going to get so much by serving others that even if it's selfish because you want a whole lot, so therefore you're going to serve others, we'll do it for selfish reasons. But there is good that will come from doing good. And so to me, that had to be part of my success principles. It wasn't just about all of these other things. It's how do I make a difference at the end of my life. People aren't going to remember Ron Dunford for any material possessions. They're not going to remember me for a lot of other things. I hope they'll remember that I did some good and I made them feel better and that their life was changed, right? I mean, one of the things that I want to do, my personal why, right, is that I want to inspire people so that they can see more, do more, and become more than they otherwise would have. If I can help someone change their range of vision and see broader, see bigger than they could have before. If they can do more than they otherwise would have, and they can become more, then I will have accomplished something, right?
Building a little bit more belief than they had before they met you. Yeah,
right. And so that's one of my classic definitions of leadership. Candidly, right? I use two words: faster and farther. If you can't take your team to the place wherever it is that you want to go, if you can't get them there faster, or you can't get them a little bit farther than they could have gone without you, then they don't need you. Your job as a leader is to get them there faster or to take them farther, because if you can't impact that, then they don't need you.
Yep.
And if they don't need you, I don't need you, right? I need leaders that can get me, and not me, get their team faster and farther. That's what that's about, right? So do good is about service. Do good is about gratitude, right? I don't, life doesn't owe anybody anything, right? And I think sometimes people that, well, life owes me this, or I should get this, or I deserve that, or I have the.
There's a lot of that in this world.
Life doesn't owe you anything. Doesn't owe you anything, right? Be grateful for what you got. Man, you want more in life. Be grateful for the things that you have, and more will come your way, right? So.
And I think something I keep thinking about. I mean, a lot of these things, I feel like, I even said it earlier. It's like these 5 things are so simple, and they can fit into anybody else's list of success principles. Yeah. And if Jack Canfield wrote a book called Success Principles,
great book,
and there's like 167 of them.
Yeah.
But you can fit one of these 5 into every single one of his 167 success principles.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking about is with my business, I've applied each one of these to be able to get where I've got, and to be able to get where I'm going, I'm going to be applying these at a high level. And the one that I talk about regularly with my guys to build belief is that do good portion of it with our customers.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of companies out there that offer replacement windows. But one thing that's going to separate us always, even as we grow to 100 million, is our commitment to doing whatever it takes to have a successful transaction for that person, and so they feel good about doing business with us. And we want to build confidence in them to know that no matter how far down the line we get after their replacement windows are done, they can always call us.
Sure.
And we'll always answer. We'll always service them. We'll always take care, even if we need to go back by their house 2 years later, which I've done on several occasions, and go give them another tutorial on how their windows work.
Sure.
That's what is going to separate us, because most other companies, doesn't matter what industry in, they're avoiding those kind of things at all costs, because it's uncomfortable and it's a huge commitment. But that's one of the things that's helped us accelerate so fast, is being able to articulate that, and then showing example after example that this is actually what we are going to do.
Yeah.
We're going to do good 100%.
Well, and that's those are in your values. I mean, those are the things that you value, and that's how you demonstrate. I mean, you do good. So values is part of that, right? And you can never go wrong by doing right. You just can't. You can never go wrong. In the short term, you may question it, but in the long term, you just.
It is a big commitment. When I was first starting the business, and I'm starting to deal with those first couple of interactions where it's like, okay, do I go down the road that my company previous would have gone, or am I going to make this commitment to do whatever it takes? Because it was scary. And back then it was me, and it's me having to drive all over the place to take care of my people. And it just started to become a consistent message, and I saw the impact that it made and the belief that it built in people and what I was doing, that people's eyes light up when I'm telling them that, with the compassion in my voice, that this is actually something I believe, and I'm living it.
Well, I said earlier, Jefferson, in the podcast, I studied people not that were one and done. They didn't win one championship, or they didn't have one successful year. It's how do you become perennial all-stars, right? How does that happen all the time? And it happens when you don't compromise, right? When you win because of the values and the ethics and the things that you have, and you don't compromise. I'm competitive as hell. I want to win in everything that I do in life, right? But I want to do it in a way that is honorable, and there's integrity, and I want it to be because I did it the right way. I don't want to win. There's thousands of stories of baseball pitchers or businessmen or all kinds of things who ended up winning for a short period of time because they did things the wrong way. It always catches up, right? So success over the long, you're not going to get to 100 million the wrong way. If you're going to get there sustainably, right? Not just get there and then have it fall away, but get there and have it sustain and continue to grow, is by doing it the right way, by doing good. So you're doing right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what's the last one?
And then the last one is have fun, right? I mean, at the end of the day, having fun is about passion. It's about creating moments. We talked about, moments earlier, right? How do you create moments? And I'm going to say have fun is about friends, right? It's about enjoying life with other people, right? It's not a solitary thing. Have fun is how can you enjoy it? You get more satisfaction when someone else is enjoying life with you and the project and the process. Right, and it is a process, right? There's not much about life that's not a process. It's a journey, and what I'll always tell people is, don't wait till you get to the destination to have fun. You better enjoy the journey, right? If you can't enjoy the journey, you won't enjoy the destination, right? I had someone in an audience one time, some lady who raised the hand, and basically said, I'm going to be happy when I become a millionaire. Right? And I said, no, you won't unless you enjoyed the journey of getting there, right? You'll be a miserable millionaire if you don't enjoy the journey, right? So there's these myths. I'll be happy when, fill in the blank. I'll be happy when I get married, or I'll be happy when I get my dream job. I'll be happy when I get a 6-figure income. I'll be happy when I, whatever happens to be, I'll be happy when. Everybody has this sort of I'll be happy when attitude. And it's not I'll be happy when, it's I'll be happy now. And when I get there, then it will just be one more step in my journey. But so having fun to me is just about understanding that it's a process and that you have to enjoy the process. And if you can't enjoy the process, then at the end it won't really matter. You'll be miserable when you get there.
And chances are you'll have burned a lot of bridges.
You'll have burned a lot of bridges
and
along the way.
All those important relationships will have deteriorated.
Yeah. So, a couple times, throughout this, you've said, simple. And I mentioned earlier that I'd sort of come back to this thing, simple but not easy, right? Success principles really are simple but not easy. And what that means is that when you think of the 5, dream big, expect success, take action, do good, have fun, it's just 10 words, right? How simple is that? But not easy because it's too easy to do the opposite. It's easy to not dream big. It's easy to not take action. We were talking about there. It's easy to not do good, right? It's easy to do the opposite. So as simple as they are, not easy because life gets in the way and life distracts us. And so we end up getting off course of where we wanted to go and how we wanted to get there.
And there's a reason why the majority of people are average and ordinary.
Yeah.
Because as simple as these concepts are, and as simple as it would be to apply these and start to create these habits, most people just choose not to.
Well, Jim Rohn said, success is a few simple disciplines repeated every day. Failure is a few errors in judgment repeated every day. It's the cumulative weight of our principles or the things that we chose right and the things that we didn't that sort of create success or failure, right? Success is nothing more than just a few simple disciplines that get repeated every day. Most people, comes back to what we talked about with habits. I'll do it every once in a while. You can't dream big every once in a while. You can't expect success every once in a while. It's what you do consistently, right? Do those 5 things consistently every day, and that will equal success. Not that you do them. I did it once. I had fun. I had fun once last week. I did good once last week. Well, that doesn't cut it, right? It's what you do consistently. I mean, anybody that you've interviewed on your podcast so far, guarantee that the successful people that you've interviewed, it's habits that they've got into that they repeat every single day that have made a difference.
Yep, that's one of the consistent themes is the habits.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as we wrap up here, the 5 principles that you can apply, they're so simple, but if you don't make the choice to put them into play in your life and start to create those disciplines and those habits, you repeat the same patterns. You do what's comfortable. We're all born, and we're all going to die someday.
Yep.
And the only difference in you having a significant life and being able to make an impact is the choices in between.
The C in between, yeah. The other thing, I guess, that I would say is, the end isn't written yet, right? I mean, we're all in a movie, right? And so there's two kinds of people, right? There's the people who want to be direct, produce, write, star in their movie of life, and understand that wherever I am right now, the next scene hasn't played out yet. So I get to change it at any point in time. I can always rewrite the end of this movie, and I can play whatever part I want to play in it. It's my movie. It's my life. I get to choose who authors it, who produces, who directs it, and who stars in it, right? Or there's the other type who says, you know what, I'm just along in this life, and I'm just going to play whatever role I happen to be in. I'm not going to be the script writer. I'm not going to produce it. I'm not going to direct it.
They're just drifting.
I'll just go through, and I'll just play a B role. I'll play whatever role that happens to come my way, right? And so, I suppose if there's a last thought or a wrap I could put on this, it's that, think of these 5 principles, but think about life as in it ain't over until it's over. The final script hasn't been written. The final scene hasn't been written. It can be an action adventure. It can be a love story. It can be exciting. It can be anything you want it to be. You get to write the script, right? So figure out what principles work, and write the script, write the ending that you want, and go for it.
Yes, I agree. You got to go for it every single day.
Yeah.
There's no days off if you want to do something significant with your life.
Yeah.
And you get to decide what choices you do from day to day. And I choose to continue to do the things that are going to help me become a better version of myself every single day, 1% better every single day. That's a significant multiple when you can string an entire life together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of doing good and taking action and going out there to make an impact and live a fulfilling life.
Yeah.
All right, Ron. That was phenomenal. That was, a lot of value in a not so short period of time. This is the longest episode that I've done. Look down at my watch, and we've already been an hour and 20 minutes.
Wow.
So, for my listeners, you guys, if you get some value out of this, go share it with somebody that you think could benefit. There was so much value, so many nuggets in here. The 5 principles, the choices that you make, the daily habits, all of these things that are so simple, but if you don't help people get exposed to them, that's why we do this. To help people get exposure. There was a point in my life when I hadn't been exposed to this stuff yet, and I can't imagine what it would look like if I had never been exposed to it. I would still be a negative, scowling mechanic or a carpenter and just repeating the same patterns over and over with a drug and alcohol problem. And there's people out there dealing with the same stuff right now, just looking for that one message. And it's whether they're ready for it or not. Maybe they have to hear it a couple of times before it sinks in, kind of like it did for me. But that's why I do this, because you never know who it's going to be, when it's going to be, and the kind of significance that person is going to be able to have because they were able to get exposure.
Well, so Jefferson, I want to make this comment as well. I've been sort of watching you for the last, 3 or 4 years, right? From whenever you started doing the little videos in front of houses saying, hey, I'm going to do this window today, and I'm going to go to this conference, I'm going to do these things, and you have grown tenfold from where you were 3 or 4 years ago. Your confidence, your attitude, your spirit, just everything about what you're doing has grown tenfold. But it's because you started taking action. You started small, right? You had a big dream, but you actually took the step and took action. And so what I'll always tell people again is, you don't have to do everything at once. There might be 10 things going wrong in your life. Don't try to correct 10 things. Just correct one, right? You started taking some simple steps, right? And so just take one step and improve in that one area of your life, and then come back to number 2 and improve with that one, and come back to number 3. If anybody tries to do it all at once, they'll fail, right? Yeah. Just correct one thing at a time. But man, you've kicked butt here over the last 3 or 4 years. It's been fun to watch you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm just barely scratching the surface of my
you are.
potential.
Yeah, you are.
Well, episode 17 in the books. Thank you so much for coming on. That was a blast, and I hope that everybody sticks around to the end on this one. I start getting like choked up about how much value we got in this, and that how much people can get out of it if they stick around, take notes, and then go out and do something with it. It doesn't even matter if you stick around to the end if you're not willing to go do something with it.
Oh.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Ron.
You bet.